Here's the story about the bank that scammed $100 million from its customers.
Today we're talking about a bank that won't let you withdraw your money. A bank where almost $100 million has vanished. Or has it? Because I've traced some of the missing funds.
Okay.
And I think some people are hiding the truth. Even worse, our regulators and safeguards may have failed us. Let me show you what I mean. Today we're talking to a bunch of people who found their money frozen in their bank last year. 6 months later, they started getting paid out, but some of the money is missing.
Wow.
Welcome to the Discord Diner.
Shout out to Coffeezilla,
Let's start with
man.
the basics. What is your name and how much money did you have on your savings app?
Well, my name is Colin. My savings was $53,105.95.
Damn.
How much are you getting back?
Not a single penny.
Whoa.
Hey, my name's Dave.
So they really fronting and scamming the public. Okay.
Lost more than $70,000. The balance I received back from Evolve was $0.
Wow. That's
Hi, my name is
$120,000.
Benjamin Schwartz. I had $43,000 that I put into my savings account. I consider myself one of the luckier ones in the situation. I was offered $36,000 back.
Whoa.
So I lost a total of $7,000 in the situation.
Damn.
Hi, my name is Jamal. I have received a little over 6,000 back. I'm still owed 11,000. My wife has received $100 back of her $55,000.
Oh my God.
Now, this was obviously surprising. People who had put their money in a savings account were told they don't actually have that amount. Instead, the bank told them, we're going to give you whatever we think you have. In some cases, it was pennies on the dollar, seemingly at random. And to explain this vicious game of financial Russian roulette, we're going to have to map out what's really going on here. All of the people you've been hearing from save their money in fintech companies like Yotta, Juno, and others. Slick financial apps that are not banks, but took deposits while advertising FDIC insurance. They did this using a middleman called Synapse to connect them with a real bank called Evolve Bank and Trust, who was FDIC insured in the event of a bank failure. So FDIC insurance, which is an American program where banks are insured with up to $250,000 against bankruptcy failure, it doesn't apply here because a bank didn't fail. A middleman did. Theoretically, everyone's money should still be safely held at Evolve. But this is where our mystery begins, because as the bankruptcy carried on, Evolve said they didn't have all the customers' money.
Oh, they
There's a
scammed it.
giant gap between what Synapse said they had versus what Evolve did. According to the Wall Street Journal, up to $96 million might be missing. Evolve Bank claims they're not the problem. They literally don't have customers' money because they were told to send it to other banks like AMG and Lineage. Why? The story goes that in late 2023, Synapse wanted to diversify banks instead of relying on just one. So they set up relationships with other banks like AMG and Lineage to hold customers' money and diversify. Makes sense. Now, most customers weren't aware of this change because it was only noted in an opt-out email basis sent to customers. Meaning, if you didn't see it when it came through, your money may have been moved without you ever knowing or approving it. Normally, this wouldn't matter, and some fintechs like Yotta even pitched it as a way to get increased FDIC insurance coverage, which in hindsight is ironic. But the effect is that everyone's money was shuffled around like a game of three-card Monte. Of course, Synapse, in theory, should have records of where all that money went, but Synapse is now in bankruptcy. Not everyone agrees with their numbers, specifically Evolve Bank and Trust, who says they don't have as much of the customer funds as Synapse says they do. To prove it, Evolve hired Incurra Consulting to do their own reconciliation of the bank's balance sheet, and their numbers versus Synapse's numbers is what has created the gap. These results were given to customers on November 4th, the day before the presidential election. Always a pretty good day to hide bad news. That is, you don't have as much savings as you thought you had. Customers are understandably confused and angry. Whoever's fault this is, it's not theirs. So that's what we're trying to uncover. Where is this nearly $100 million of missing funds?
That's a lot of money, bro.
Somebody has it, but everyone's saying it's not them. The other banks, AMG and Lineage, by the way, do not deny they had some of the money from Evolve, but they tend to agree with Synapse's version of the ledger. and have already paid out based on that. Meanwhile, Evolve is also saying they've paid out their fair share. So we're stuck in this horrible situation where people are using different ledgers to say, oh, we fully paid out everyone. And some people are getting pennies on the dollar, seemingly at random.
My name is Max, and I have a little bit over $21,000 in a Yotta account.
How much is the bank going to give you back?
Evolve is going to give me $17.
Oh my God, bro. Yo.
How does that feel? I mean, what is that like?
A slap in the face. It's an insult. Honestly, I would have rather them not giving me anything and say that they cannot proceed with the complete reconciliation that they initially intended to do, than to give me scraps and then basically washing their hands with it.
Yeah, what would y'all have done in the comments? Let me know how y'all would have handled the situation.
My name is Pblar, and I put $20,000 into my Yotta savings account.
Oh my
After
God.
the reconciliation, Evolve has told me that they're going to offer me $700 out of that $20,000.
Oh,
Insulting. It's insulting.
God.
So my name's Corey, and I had about $34,000, a little over $34,000 left in my account at the time of everything being frozen. Well, they are giving me back $0 out of the $34,000 that I am supposed to have.
Now, with so much on the line, all of these banks have been desperately trying to put out their side of the story, with specifically Evolve's being the most different. And they've been sharing screenshots of hundreds of millions of dollars moving from their bank to these other banks, saying that they just don't have the money. Whereas Synapse's CEO, on the other hand, has been very vocal as well. Even one of the fintechs, Yotta, has sued Evolve. But at the end of the day, it's become a bit of a he said, she said, where everyone has their own numbers that they're using to say we're right, but it's hard to rely on anyone's word. So I wondered if we could trace the problem ourselves a little differently, not relying on any one source, but instead going to everyone, just asking questions, and maybe finding some different threads to pull on that gives us insights. And this is where things got interesting.
This is
Little
why I
by
like
little,
Coffeezilla,
I was
man.
able to get a bunch of internal emails and documents between these companies, even get detailed banking records. All of this showed big problems, but they had been brewing for much longer than I thought. Way before everything blew up in May of 2024, rewind the clocks back to when everyone's money was in one place at Evolve. And let's look at some internal documents that were sent to Synapse. It's September 25th, 2023. That's the day Evolve sent notice that Synapse had breached the Master Services Agreement by failing to fully fund the FBO account. By the way, FBO just means for benefit of. Plain English, it means it's the customer's account. The money people were putting into these fintechs wasn't fully funded by what was in the actual bank account per their agreement. That's what Evolve says. Evolve then demands $50 million in a reserve account to be filled within 2 days of the letter. They also notify Synapse that they're going to take $16 million from what is called the Synapse's fee account to hold it for end users, aka customers. Now understand, the fees, that just means the interest Synapse would have been paid on the cash they hold with Evolve.
That makes sense.
Synapse, of course, is a middleman, so a lot of that money they're going to make from interest is just passed on to fintechs like Yotta, who then in turn passes it on to customers. So if Synapse is short $16 million, that means Yotta and now a lot of people are short $16 million. Everyone's getting squeezed, but that's just the start of the problem. So you remember Synapse owes $50 million in the next 2 days. But when it comes due, Synapse gets a termination letter from Evolve, and then they send their own email. Now, before we open this, understand, customers had no idea that their money might not be fully funded.
How would you know, though?
And were never notified of these problems. Everything you're about to hear is being whispered in emails right now. And what is being said, like deliberate misstatements, factual realities, potential harm, these are white-collar words for, hey, we think this is going to end a disaster and we think you did it. But of course, nobody knows that yet, except for Synapse and Evolve. Synapse even seems to anticipate this would eventually go public because they write in their letter, we do not expect this response will prompt significant change, but we hope it will correct the record and provide factual transparency to those who may read your letters. Like us, for example. They're anticipating outside parties we're going to come in and read all of these. Now, in here we find Synapse blaming the deficiency in the customer account on Evolve. They accuse Evolve of misappropriation of funds, a situation caused by Evolve itself.
So they
Synapse
already
claims
knew.
that 12 days prior, they had notified Evolve that Evolve was charging fees from customers' accounts that they shouldn't have. Basically, they were payment processor fees. The payment processor was called TabaPay, and this should not have been on the customer to pay it. According to Synapse, about $12 million in fees were charged to their customers.
Wow.
And Synapse says this $50 million demand you guys gave us, that's retaliation for us telling you that you have been misappropriating these funds. Synapse then also highlights a $13 million account analysis charge that was also improperly taken from customers' money.
$63 million.
Both sides are basically demanding tens of millions from each other. And we'll get to some concrete evidence in a moment, but I want to flag that for right now, Evolve, Synapse, the chilling realization is that whoever's right, this collapse began over a year ago. And more importantly, before the migration of funds out of Evolve Bank.
Wow.
Banking experts who have been watching this unfold, by the way, have commented on this. Jason Mikula is our fintech and banking resident expert. He agreed to help me get to the bottom of this. And here's what he told me.
In my mind, one of the biggest worst decisions was allowing this brokerage migration to take place, which is on both Synapse and Evolve, right?
Yeah.
Allowing that migration to take place when it would seem that everyone knew the records were not accurate and reliable and that there was a shortfall. Because that has really compounded the difficulty of trying to unwind this situation and understand what happened.
Exactly. Why would you shuffle everyone's money around to different banks if you hadn't sorted out where everyone's money was in the first place?
All right, guys, if y'all want part 2, just write part 2. If I don't see no part 2s, we do not keep it going, and I'll just keep it going to another video, all right? This is Rich House Crime. Make sure you subscribe at the top bell. I'll see you in the next one. I'm out of here.